Today I'm going to teach you how to fix your lopsided glute muscles. What's going on, everybody? How you doing? It's Blake Bowman here with GuerrillaZen Fitness, and in today's video I'm going to teach you how to fix your lopsided glutes. So it's pretty common for people to have this going on. You might notice that one butt cheek is kind of bigger than the other one, or you might notice that one butt cheek gets more sore than the other one after like a workout. These are all examples of glute imbalances from left to right, and that's what I'm going to teach you how to fix today. Now, there are a variety of things that can cause one glute to be weaker than the other glute. My goal in today's video is not to go over all of the potential things that can cause this, but instead to focus on the main causes behind this, and then I want to teach you solutions to fix those main problems. Before I get there, though, it's really important that you understand the functions of the glute muscles. So the three main functions of the glutes, and emphasis on main, are hip extension, hip abduction, and hip internal rotation. Hip extension is occurring when the angle between your leg and your torso is getting longer, okay? When it's getting bigger, okay? So you're going into hip extension when you push up and you return from a squat, when you're doing hip thrusters, when your back leg is behind you in a stride when you're running or walking. Whenever that hip angle is getting bigger, you're actively going into hip extension, and it's the glutes that are the prime mover and the muscle that's supposed to be responsible for that. Hip abduction is simply just taking your leg away from your body. Think about your leg being abducted by aliens, okay? So lateral movements from side to side, a lot of that is responsible for the glutes are responsible for a lot of that. Side lying leg raise, or just raising your leg out to the side like that, is another function of the glutes. The third main function of the glutes, specifically the gluteus medius, is to internally rotate the femur, the leg bone. So hip internal rotation. I can show you what that looks like, but it's a little bit hard. I'll show you later on in this video. Now, right off the bat, most people attempt to strengthen their glutes using hip extension based exercises almost exclusively. So things like squats, deadlifts, hip thrusters, glute kickbacks. These are all hip extension exercises that target the glutes. While these are all really good exercises to help to activate the glute maximus, these could contribute to your lopsided glute situation in two main ways. You could have something called synergistic dominance of the hamstring on the weak side, or you can have inhibition of the glutes on the weak side as well. Now, synergistic dominance of the hamstrings, what does this mean? Basically, like I said earlier, the glutes are supposed to be the prime mover that takes your leg into hip extension. So when you're coming out of a squat, when you're walking or running, when your leg is behind you, that's an extension. Your glutes are supposed to be doing the work there, okay? However, your hamstrings are supposed to synergize with the glutes. They're supposed to help the glutes out to produce that motion, okay? But the glutes are supposed to be doing most of the work. Now, oftentimes what people will have as a result of sitting is they'll develop something called synergistic dominance of the hamstrings, where in this case the synergist muscles, the hamstrings, dominate over the glutes. They do all of the work instead of the glutes, and in time when you're doing these hip extension exercises, the glutes are staying shut off, they're staying lazy, and the hamstrings are firing. Now you can have this on both sides, and this can affect both glutes, or you can have this on one side, and that can contribute to the lopsided glute situation. It's pretty simple to fix this. You just need a foam roller or a ball, and this is how you do it. Okay, so to do this, you're gonna need a foam roller, a medicine ball like this, even a softball, or even potentially a baseball would work. I like balls better than foam rollers because they kind of get more of a smaller pressure zone, which is what we want for this. But right now I'm gonna be using this small medicine ball. It's very simple to do this. Most of the time people are gonna experience that synergistic dominance of the hamstrings up in the upper hamstring, which is right below your butt, okay? So to roll this, you can put the ball down on a bench, or you can get on the floor like me, and you simply just roll basically the upper part of the hamstrings right up to that butt bone, that pointy butt bone. That's called the ischial tuberosity. That's where the hamstrings attach. You just roll the length of that. Pretty much, if you're feeling the hamstrings work when you're doing hip extension based exercises, whatever fibers of the hamstring you're feeling contract, those are the ones that you want to roll with this. Okay, you want to do that on the side, again, with the weaker glute, if you think that the synergistic dominance of the hamstrings is a problem on that side. Okay, this is something that you can do interset between those hip extension based exercises. And what that means is in between sets. Okay, so if you're doing hip thrusters, for example, which is a classic hip extension based exercise to turn on the glutes, something like this, what I would recommend you to do, if you had synergistic dominance of the hamstrings, do a set, okay, and then roll the overactive side out for about 30 seconds. Do another set, roll the overactive side out. Do another set, roll the overactive side out. Keep doing that to constantly shut down that neurological drive going into the muscle. What doing that will do is it will partially shut down the neurological drive going into the hamstrings, and that will in turn allow the glutes to turn on again and do the work that they're supposed to do when you're going into hip extension. Okay, so it basically tells the hamstrings to calm down a little bit, and it tells the glutes that they can turn on again. Okay. You know, you might not want to do this before a sporting event, okay, or a functional thing where you're like running in the woods, or something like that. But if you're in a controlled environment like a gym and you're training your legs, then that's a good opportunity to use this interset rolling of the hamstrings to shut off the hamstring so that that glute can turn on again. Okay, so the second thing that I mentioned a moment ago was inhibition of the glutes due to hip flexor tightness, okay? And basically the hip flexor muscles, they're a group of muscles, and they flex the hip, okay? So they decrease that angle between the leg and the upper body, okay? So they are the muscles that are responsible for the exact opposite motion of hip extension, which is what I've been talking about. So if your glutes extend your hip, it's your hip flexors that flex the hip. They decrease that angle. Think about pulling your knees up into your chest. Now these muscles are what's called antagonist muscles to the glutes, okay? They are literally the opposing muscle group to the glutes, okay? They have the exact opposite function as I just explained. Now when they're tight, they can actually inhibit, which means shut down and stop from working, the glutes, okay? So if you are really tight in the hips, this can affect your glute function on the backside, okay? And again, kind of like the synergistic dominance of the hamstrings, this is something that you can have going on both sides, or you can have it going on one side. If you have it going on one side, it's going to inhibit that glute from firing, and you're going to experience a weaker glute on that side. There's a pretty quick, remedy for this, and I'm going to show you that right now. Okay, so this is a classic hip flexor stretch, but we're also going to throw in an activation exercise with it for the glutes. This is just going to help your situation overall. So if it's, let's say, your left side that has a weaker glute, again, it's going to be it could be those hip flexor muscles on that side that are inhibiting that glute. So you want to stretch the hip flexors and also try to activate that glute during the stretching process, okay? A real simple way to do this, put your knee down like this, okay? Put your other hands on your knee that's out. Okay, maintain good posture. This is very important. You want to posteriorly tuck the pelvis, tilt it like this, okay? Don't let your back arch and your pelvis tilt forward like that. Okay, tuck it underneath, okay? And then it's very simple what you do here. You rock forward. As you simultaneously rock forward, you squeeze your butt. Come back to a neutral position, rock forward, squeeze the butt. Neutral position, rock forward, squeeze the butt, okay? You can do this 30 to 50 times, okay? Each time you rock forward and squeeze the butt, try to squeeze the butt a little bit harder. Try to go a little bit further in front, just a small micro-millimeter further in front each subsequent rep. This is really going to help open up your hips, shut down that neurological drive in the hip flexors so that they're not inhibiting the glutes so much. All right, so using the appropriate exercises and stuff I just talked about at the appropriate time can really help you out to work this imbalance out. Now, there are some additional things you can do, and what those are unilateral exercises, which means exercises that work one side of the body at a time that utilize the other functions of the glutes, okay? So specifically, I'm talking about leg abduction, which remember being abducted by aliens, that means your leg's going away from your body, and hip internal rotation. Both of these movements do not involve the hamstring at all. The hamstring does not synergize to help produce hip abduction or internal rotation like it does with hip extension. So if your synergistic dominance of the hamstrings was the main thing that was inhibiting the glute on the weaker side, then you're going to find that it's way easier to turn on the glutes without interference from the dominant hamstrings with these motions. They can, though, turn on some of the hip flexor muscles like the TFL, which is in the front of your hip here. If that is happening, then what I would encourage you to do is much like how we use the ball to do interset, rolling of the hamstrings, you would also do interset rolling of the TFL in between sets of these exercises, hip abduction and internal rotation, to keep that TFL shut down and allow the glutes to turn on. Here are two really great simple exercises that you can do to take advantage of the hip abduction and internal rotation. Okay, so these two exercises are very simple. The first one is hip abduction, which, like I said, is basically just taking your leg away from your body like it's being abducted by aliens, I always say, to help people remember the difference between adduction and abduction. But essentially, you just lay on your side for this, make sure your toes point forward, and you raise your leg up like this. Don't let your toes point up like that. Keep them forward the whole time like this. Okay, this is it. You can do this standing. There are machines that offer this motion to you, but the easiest way to do it is just lay on your side and do that. I'd recommend doing that anywhere between 4 to 5 sets of 15 reps every time you do that. Okay, so that is, you want to do that on both sides. I wouldn't recommend just doing it on the weaker side because you can develop other imbalances that way, but feel confident in doing both this and the next one that I'm going to show you because they're unilateral. They work one side at a time, and they're really just conducive to working out muscular imbalances. Now, the other one that you can do, okay, remember the three functions are hip extension, hip abduction, and internal rotation. So the internal rotation one is pretty simple. You could take that ball that you had earlier, a foam roller or anything, you basically want to pinch that between your knees like this, okay? And then all you do is keep your body sideways, you raise your ankle up in the air, and then come down. Like this, okay? What we're doing is we're taking that leg bone and we're internally rotating it, okay? That's why this is called hip internal rotation. It might look external to you because my foot's going out, but if you actually look at the leg bone here, the femur, it's rotating in, and that's what we want to do. This is activating the gluteus medius, okay? With this, I'd recommend about the same amount of sets, 4 to 5 sets of 15 reps, okay? And I would do that immediately following or prior to the hip abduction. Now, I do want to say, with both of these, they will take out the hamstrings, but they will not totally take out the activation of the hip flexors. Okay, so if you have really dominant hip flexors, then you might need to inhibit the hip flexors in between sets of this. And the way you would do that is you would get your foam roller, you can even use your ball like this, and basically in between sets of these exercises, side lying leg raise and the internal rotation, you put your hip flexor muscle down on there. Okay, I don't want to say hip flexor muscle because there are multiple hip flexor muscles, but you put that TFL down on there and you roll it out in between sets just like we did with the upper hamstrings. TFL is tensor fascia lata, and that's the one that's right here. That's the one that's most likely going to tighten up on you if you're predisposed to it during these two exercises. So if you're experiencing that firing, remember we're trying to get those glutes to fire to balance them out. If you're feeling the hip flexor fire, inhibit it by foam rolling it or using a ball on it in between sets of those exercises. Okay, so there you have it. The solution to fixing your lopsided glutes is pretty simple. Basically, you want to check the side of your body that has the weaker glute for synergistic dominance of the hamstrings on that side, as well as inhibition of the glutes due to tight hip flexors. If you identify those things going on, you want to do what I talked about in this video. Inhibit the glute or the hamstrings from firing in between sets of hip extension based exercises with a ball. You also want to be stretching those hip flexors with that glute priming exercise. If you notice that your hip flexors are really tight and you think that's inhibiting the glutes. Lastly, you want to throw in motions of the hip that don't involve the hamstrings, right? And just take advantage of new ranges of motion. That hip side lying hip abduction exercise that I showed you and the hip internal rotation exercise where you raise your foot up in the air, those are both great. That's it for this video. I hope you really enjoyed this. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click that red button right next to GuerrillaZen down there. Also give this video a like. That's really the best way that you can support me here on YouTube is by liking the video. So if you did like it, leave me a like, leave me a comment down below and tell me what you want to see me make videos on in the future. Lastly, if you really like this video and you want to take this a step further, then you need to get my free week-long workout called 3-Day Functional Training Split. Basically what this is, it's a 3-day training plan that you can go through and you can repeat as often as you like. It's fully balanced. It has a lot of focus on glute training, okay, which is really going to be good for you if you're watching this video and you're interested in this subject. We do a lot of unilateral stuff in there, some corrective stuff that helps you improve your posture too. It's all free. It's available on my website. All you need to do is click the link in the description down below or the first link in the comment section down below. That'll take you to my website. As soon as you land there, I will ask you for your email, and as soon as you enter in your email, I'll send you a copy of 3-Day Functional Training Split within 5 minutes. If you're looking for another place to get 3-Day Functional Training Split, you can click this. That'll take you there as well. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, again, this is another spot that you can do that. If you want to see another video similar to this one, then check this out right over here. And that's it for today's video. I'll see you next time.